You are disrupting this flight, and frankly, you don't look like you belong in this cabin, let alone on this aircraft." Captain Sterling spat, his voice dripping with a condescension that froze the air in the first-class cabin. He loomed over the woman in seat 1A, gesturing to the economy curtain. "I have a priority 1 VIP boarding in 3 minutes. You need to move now." The woman in the oversized hoodie didn't flinch. She just tapped her phone screen, sending one final text. She looked up, her eyes calm but dangerous. "Captain, are you absolutely sure you want to do this? Because once I stand up, you're not going to like how this lands." "Get up," he sneered. She stood up, and that was the moment Captain Sterling's life ended. He just didn't know it yet. The rain was lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private terminal at JFK Airport. It was a miserable Tuesday morning in New York, the kind that made the tarmac look like a bruised gray ocean. Inside the Aurora Elite Lounge, however, the air smelled of expensive espresso and leather. This wasn't just a waiting room. It was a sanctuary for the 0.001% tech moguls, oil barons, and A-list celebrities who wouldn't dare fly commercial, even in first class. Aurora Elite Aviation was the crown jewel of transatlantic travel. They operated a fleet of modified Boeing 787 Dreamliners and Bombardier Global 7500s, offering a shared private experience. You didn't buy a ticket, you bought a membership that cost more than most people's mortgages. Elena Vance walked through the sliding glass doors, shaking off a wet umbrella. She didn't look like a member. At 32, Elena had the kind of face that was naturally striking, but currently hidden behind a pair of thick-rimmed glasses and a charcoal hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. She wore faded black leggings and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, held together by a cheap plastic clip. She walked up to the concierge desk, dragging a beaten-up carry-on bag that looked like it had survived a war zone. "Checking in for flight AE 909 to London," Elena said, her voice soft but clear. The concierge, a woman named Tiffany, whose makeup was as sharp as a blade, didn't even look up from her computer screen initially. When she finally lowered her gaze to Elena, her nose wrinkled slightly, a microscopic twitch of disdain. She scanned Elena's outfit, lingering on the fraying hem of the hoodie. "This is the private terminal for Aurora Elite members only," Tiffany said, her tone icy. "Deliveries are around the back, near the hangars." Elena didn't blink. She was used to this. In the 3 years since she had sold her logistics software company, Logitech, to Amazon for $4.2 billion, she had learned that money changed everything except people's assumptions. She preferred it this way. It made it easier to see who people really were. "I'm not a delivery driver," Elena said, sliding a black titanium card across the marble counter. It made a heavy clink sound. "I'm on the manifest, Elena Vance." Tiffany stared at the card. It was the Aurora Obsidian status card. There were only 12 of them in existence. It signified not just membership, but equity-level investment. Tiffany picked it up as if it might explode. She typed the name into her system. The screen flashed green. Priority owner class. Tiffany's face went pale. She swallowed hard, her demeanor shifting instantly from gatekeeper to servant. "Ma'am, Miss Vance, I apologize. The system didn't. We weren't expecting you to look so comfortable." "It's a long flight," Elena said dryly. "Is 1A available?" "I specifically requested the bulkhead for the privacy." Yes, of course," Tiffany stammered, typing furiously. "Seat 1A is yours. The flight is nearly full, however. We have a full manifest of high-profile guests heading to the Davos summit." "That's fine. Just get me on board. I have work to do." Elena took her boarding pass and walked toward the security screening, leaving a shaking Tiffany behind. Elena just wanted to get to London, sign the final paperwork for her latest acquisition, a struggling European electric vehicle startup, and sleep. She had been awake for 36 hours, coding a patch for the startup's failing navigation system. She was exhausted. She boarded the aircraft, a stunningly retrofitted Boeing 787. The interior was more like a flying hotel than a plane. The configuration was sparse, only 30 seats, all lie-flat suites with closing doors. Elena found one. It was the prime spot, the most secluded suite on the plane. located right near the cockpit entrance. She threw her battered bag into the overhead bin and collapsed into the plush leather seat. She pulled her laptop out, put on her noise-canceling headphones, and closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't notice the flight attendants whispering in the galley. "Who is that?" One whispered, gesturing to Elena's sneakers. "Manifests as Vance." The other replied, curling her lip, "Probably a lottery winner or some rapper's assistant. She brings down the property value of the whole cabin." Elena ignored the vibes. She just wanted peace, but peace was the one thing she wasn't going to get. Today, the cabin began to fill up. Men in $5,000 suits and women dripping in Cartier jewelry filed in. They glanced at Elena with confusion, then disdain. She was an anomaly, a glitch in their matrix of perfection. 10 minutes before departure, a commotion erupted at the front of the plane. Captain Richard Thorne stepped out of the cockpit. Thorne was a legend in his own mind, silver hair, jawline like granite, and an ego that required its own cargo hold. He had been flying for Aurora for 5 years and acted as if he owned the fleet. He was chatting with the purser, a nervous woman named Sarah. When he saw the passenger manifest, Sarah said, "We have a problem, Thorne." His voice was a low rumble. "I see Senator Holloway is on the list. Late edition." "Yes," Captain Sarah said. "He just booked 10 minutes ago. His private jet had a mechanical failure." "Holloway is a personal friend of the CEO," Thorne said, straightening his tie. "And he prefers seat 1A, always. He gets motion sickness if he's not in the bulkhead." Sarah looked at her tablet, then nervously towards seat 1A, where Elena was typing furiously on her laptop, her hood up. "Captain, 1A is taken, Miss Vance. She checked in 20 minutes ago." Thorne peered around the galley curtain, squinting at Elena. He saw the hoodie, the messy hair, and the lack of visible luxury. "She looks like she snuck on board to clean the upholstery." "Who is she?" "Some influencer using miles. She has an obsidian card." "Captain," Sarah said quietly. "Obsidian cards can be gifted," Thorne dismissed, waving his hand. "Probably a mistress or a daughter of someone important who isn't here to defend her. Look, Senator Holloway is arriving into minutes. I'm not going to tell a United States senator that he has to sit in row 4 because a girl in a sweatshirt wants to play pretend in the bulkhead. Move her, Captain." "I can't," Sarah whispered, terrified. "Policy says I am the captain." Thorne snapped, though he kept his voice just low enough to not alert the whole cabin. "My word is law on this vessel. If you won't do it, I will." Thorne adjusted his cap and marched into the cabin. He didn't approach Elena with the customer service smile usually reserved for these flights. He approached her like a principal catching a student smoking in the bathroom. He stopped at seat 1A and tapped loudly on the shell of her seat. Elena didn't hear him at first. Her headphones were blasting lo-fi beats. Thorne tapped harder this time on the actual tray table she was working on. Elena jumped slightly, pulling off her headphones. She looked up, confused. "Can I help you? Miss Vance, is it?" Thorne asked, looking down his nose at her. "Yes, I'm Captain Thorne. We have a slight logistical issue with the seating arrangement today." He lied smoothly. "I'm going to need you to relocate to seat 8D. It's a lovely window seat in the rear of the cabin." Elena looked at him, bewildered. "I booked 1A. I paid for 1A. And I'm refunding the difference in status," Thorne said, his eyes flicking over her attire. "We have a priority 1 VIP boarding, a government official who requires the security protocol of the bulkhead seat. It's a federal requirement." It was a lie, a blatant, bold-faced lie. There was no federal requirement for senators to sit in one. Elena knew this. She knew aviation law better than most pilots. She had written the logistics code for the FAA's cargo routing systems 2 years ago. "Captain Thorne," Elena said, her voice steady. "I know for a fact that is not a regulation. I reserved this seat. I'm working on a deadline. I'm not moving." Thorne's face reddened. He wasn't used to being told no, certainly not by women dressed like teenagers. He leaned in closer, invading her personal space. "Listen to me, young lady," he hissed. "I don't know who bought you this ticket, maybe daddy, maybe a boyfriend. But on my ship, you follow my orders. Senator Holloway is boarding this plane. He is a man of significant importance. You are well, you are evidently flexible. Now gather your things, or I will have security escort you off for non-compliance. Elena stared at him. The disrespect was palpable. It wasn't just about the seat anymore. It was the assumption, the arrogance, the daddy comment. You're making a mistake, Captain, Elena said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. A very expensive mistake. Is that a threat? Thorne laughed, straightening up and raising his voice so the surrounding passengers could hear. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We have a passenger who is refusing crew instructions. He looked back at Elena. Last chance, move to 8D or get off the plane. Just then, the cabin door bustled. Senator Holloway entered. He was a loud, boisterous man with a red face and a cigar smoke aura. He was followed by an entourage of 2 aides. Thorne, good to see you, Ricky, Holloway boomed. Where's my seat? My back is killing me. Thorne smiled an oily, ingratiating grin. Right here, Senator, just clearing out some debris. He gestured dismissively at Elena. Elena looked at Holloway, then back at Thorne. She realized exactly what was happening. This wasn't policy. This was the old boys club in action. She closed her laptop slowly. She didn't pack her bag. She didn't stand up. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. I'm not moving to 8D. Elena said calmly, then you're getting off. Thorne snapped. He keyed his radio. Ground, this is Captain Thorne, requesting law enforcement to the gate. I have a disruptive passenger in 1A. The cabin went silent. Passengers were craning their necks. Whispers of, she must be drunk. And who does she think she is? Floated through the air. Elena unlocked her phone. She didn't call the police. She didn't call a lawyer. She dialed a number. That started with a Swiss country code. Hello, a voice answered on the second ring. It was heavily accented. Hans, Elena said, her eyes locked on Captain Thorne's smug face. It's Elena. I need you to authorize an immediate override protocol. On flight A909. Yes, right now. Thorne rolled his eyes. Who are you calling? Your travel agent. He mocked. It's too late. Elena ignored him. Authorization code, Zulu X-ray 1, owner. Password, Nemesis. She hung up. Thorne paused. He frowned. Owner Nemesis. Those sounded like system administrative codes. But before he could process it, 2 airport police officers boarded the plane. Looking breathless, Captain, the officer asked. Thorne pointed a trembling finger at Elena. Remove her. Trespassing and failure to comply with crew instructions. The officer looked at Elena. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Elena stood up. She smoothed down her hoodie. She looked Thorne dead in the eye. I'll get off, Elena said. But you might want to check your flight tablet, Captain. I think you have a new message from headquarters. She grabbed her bag and walked off the plane, flanked by police. Head held high, Thorne scoffed. Turning to the senator. Apologies, Senator. Trash is taken out. Please sit. He walked back to the cockpit, feeling like a king. He sat in the pilot's seat and prepared to run the pre-flight checklist. He felt the vibration of his iPad, the electronic flight bag buzzing in its mount. A red notification bar was flashing across the top of the screen. That was rare. Red meant critical. Company-wide alert. He tapped it. The message was short. From Board of Directors, Global Operations to Captain Arthur, AE9. Word to 9 subject immediate ground stop. Flight AE9009 is grounded immediately. Do not depart. Await instructions. Asset transfer in progress. Thorne stared at the screen. Asset transfer. What the hell? He didn't know that inside the terminal, Elena Vance wasn't being arrested. She was standing in the jet bridge, watching the police officer's radio crackle to life with a frantic voice from the airport authority. Release the suspect. Repeat, release the suspect immediately. That is the asset owner. The real story was just beginning. The jet bridge at JFK was cold, a stark contrast to the humidity of the cabin. The 2 Port Authority police officers were gripping Elena's arms, not roughly, but with the firm indifference of men who handled disruptive passengers 5 times a day. Ma'am, we're going to take you to the precinct for processing, the older officer said. Reaching for his handcuffs, trespassing on a commercial aircraft is a federal offense. Elena didn't resist. She didn't pull away. She just looked at her watch, a battered Casio digital watch that she wore ironically, which sat right next to a diamond tennis bracelet hidden under her sleeve. "Wait 10 seconds," she said softly. "Ma'am, let's go." The radio on the officer's shoulder exploded with static, followed by a voice that was bordering on hysterical. It was the dispatch chief for the entire airport. "Unit for Alpha, hold position. Do not, repeat, do not remove the suspect from the gate." The officer froze, his hand hovering over his handcuffs. He keyed his mic. "Dispatch for Alpha. We have the subject in custody. Captain Thorne wants her off. We are moving to transport." The voice screamed loud enough that it echoed off the metal walls of the jet bridge. "We just got a call from the FAA and the Aurora Elite headquarters in Zurich. That is not a passenger, that is the principal. I repeat, the subject is the principal." The officer frowned, confused. "Principal? What does that mean?" "It means she owns the damn plane. For Alpha, she owns the airline. She owns the terminal you are standing in. Release her immediately and apologize, or we are all looking for new jobs by lunch." The officer went rigid. He slowly took his hand off Elena's arm, as if he had just realized he was holding a live cobra. He looked at his partner, whose eyes were wide with panic. They both looked at Elena. She hadn't moved. She just adjusted her glasses and offered a small, terrifyingly polite smile. "You were just doing your job, officer. I don't blame you. You were given false information by the flight crew, Miss Vance." The officer stammered, his tough guy demeanor evaporating instantly. We had no idea." "The captain said the captain is confused," Elena said, brushing a piece of lint off her oversized hoodie. "I'm going to go back inside and clarify things for him. You might want to stick around. I'll need you to escort someone else off in about 5 minutes." Inside the cockpit of Flight A909, the atmosphere was rapidly deteriorating. Captain Richard Thorne was staring at the navigation displays. The asset transfer message was still flashing red on his iPad, but now the aircraft's main screens, the multifunction displays MFDs, went black. "What the hell did you do?" Senator Holloway barked from the doorway of the cockpit. "Why aren't we pushing back? I have a dinner in London at 8 p.m. "I didn't do anything," Thorne snapped, losing his cool. He furiously tapped the flight management system keypad. Nothing. The plane was electrically alive, but the avionics were locked out. It was as if the plane had been bricked remotely. Suddenly, the cockpit printer, the thermal printer used for weather reports and clearances, whirred to life. A long strip of paper curled out. Thorne ripped it off, his hands shaking. "From System Admin Root User Events to Deck Crew, CMD revoke clearance. All message. Captain Thorne, you have violated Article 4 of your employment contract, gross misconduct. You have also attempted to evict the owner of the aircraft. Please remain seated." "I am coming back." Thorne read the name, Events. The girl in the hoodie. His stomach dropped through the floor. The blood drained from his face so fast he felt dizzy. He looked at his first officer, a young pilot named Dave, who had stayed quiet during the whole ordeal. "Dave," Thorne whispered, "who bought Aurora Elite last month?" "I thought it was a hedge fund." Dave looked up from his own phone, his face pale. "I just Googled it, Captain. It was a holding company called Vance Global Ventures. The CEO is Elena Vance. She's the tech mogul who invented the quantum logistics algorithm." Dave turned the phone screen toward Thorne. There was a picture of Elena Vance on the cover of Forbes. She was wearing a gala gown, looking stunning and powerful. But the eyes were the exact same ones Thorne had just stared into and laughed at. "Oh my God," Thorne breathed. "She's worth $20 billion. Rick," Dave whispered, "and you just called her trash." Before Thorne could process the magnitude of his error, the cabin door hissed and clicked. The heavy lock disengaged. The jet bridge had been reconnected. Thorne didn't want to turn around. He wanted to dissolve into the seat, but he heard the footsteps. They weren't the heavy tread of the police officers. They were the soft, squeaky steps of worn-out sneakers. Elena walked back onto the plane. The silence in the cabin was absolute. Every passenger in the first-class suites had stopped talking. They had seen the police take her off, and now, miraculously, she was back. But something was different. She wasn't hunching her shoulders anymore. She walked with a predator's stride, relaxed, lethal, and completely in control. Sarah the purser was standing in the galley, trembling. She had evidently received a call from ground operations too. She looked like she was about to faint. "More, Miss Vance." Sarah squeaked. "Can I take your coat? Can I get you a glass of Dom Perignon? Anything?" Elena paused. She looked at Sarah kindly. "It's okay, Sarah. I know Thorne bullied you. You were scared. I saw the roster. You're a single mom. You need this job. You're safe. I'm not here for you." Sarah let out a sob of relief, covering her mouth. "Thank you, Mum." But Elena said, her voice hardening as she looked toward the cockpit, "I am here for him." Elena walked to seat 1. A Senator Holloway was sitting there, nursing a scotch, looking annoyed. He saw Elena and rolled his eyes. "For God's sake," Holloway groaned. "Why are you back? Did you cry to the police until they let you go? I told you I need the seat. I am a United States Senator." Elena stood in the aisle. She didn't yell. She spoke with the volume one uses in a library, which forced everyone to lean in to listen. "Senator Holloway," she began, "you are sitting in that seat because Captain Thorne violated company policy to impress you. You claimed your private jet, a Gulfstream G650, tail number N40 for GV, had a mechanical failure." Holloway blinked. "Yes, it did." "So what? It didn't have a mechanical failure," Elena said, her voice cutting like a laser. "It was grounded by the maintenance crew at Teterboro because you haven't paid your hangar fees or your maintenance bills in 6 months. You owe Global Aero Services over $400,000. The cabin gasped. Holloway turned beet red. "How dare you? That is private financial information. I own Global Aero Services." Elena said simply, "I acquired them 3 weeks ago, just like I acquired this airline. Just like I own the leasing company that actually holds the title to your Gulfstream. Technically, Senator, you are currently flying on my credit in every sense of the word." Holloway's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The other passengers, sharks of the business world, started to chuckle. They recognized the alpha in the room, and it wasn't the politician. "Now," Elena said, pointing a slender finger at seat 8D in the back, "you have 2 choices. You can move to seat 8D, which is a lovely seat by the way, or you can get off my plane and explain to the press why you were kicked off a flight owned by your biggest creditor." Holloway looked around the cabin. He saw the mocking smiles of the other billionaires. He realized he had no power here. Grumbling, he grabbed his briefcase. "Fine," he spat, "but I'm filing a complaint." "You do that," Elena said. She waited until he was gone. Then she turned her attention to the cockpit. The door was open. Captain Thorne was standing there, looking like a man facing a firing squad. Elena walked up to him. She stood toe to toe. He was 6'2". She was 5'6", but in that moment she towered over him. "Captain Thorne," Elena said. "Miss Vance," Thorne choked out. Clearly there has been a misunderstanding." "If I had known," she said. "That's the problem, Richard. If you had known I was a billionaire, you would have treated me with respect. But because you thought I was a nobody in a hoodie, you treated me like dirt. You degraded me. You tried to intimidate me. You abused your authority to humiliate a paying customer. I was trying to accommodate a VIP. I am the VIP." Elena's voice rose just a fraction, cracking with genuine anger. "But that doesn't matter, even if I was a student, or a janitor, or a lottery winner. I bought the ticket. The contract was made. You decided that your judgment of my worth was more important than the rules." She stepped closer. "I checked your file while I was standing in the jet bridge, Richard. This isn't the first time, is it? 3 complaints in the last year. Abusive language toward ground staff, flirting with junior flight attendants, bumping passengers you didn't like. You've been treating this airline like your personal kingdom." Thorne was sweating profusely. "Now I have a perfect flight record. I'm the best pilot in the fleet." "You were," Elena corrected. "Do you know what the override protocol does?" Captain Thorne shook his head. "It locks the flight controls. It disconnects the FMS, and it wipes the crew roster for the active flight." Elena gestured to the 2 police officers who were still standing by the door, watching with fascination. "Officers," Elena said, "I'd like to report a trespasser in the cockpit." Thorne's eyes bulged. What? You can't be serious. You can't fire me right here. We have to fly. And I just did, Elena said calmly. You are terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct and breach of contract. Therefore, you are a civilian standing in a secure flight deck. That is a federal crime. She looked at the police. Please remove him. Wait, no, Thorne shouted as the officers stepped forward. You can't do this. Who is going to fly the plane? You don't have a backup crew. You'll ground the flight. You'll lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was desperate now, clinging to the hope that she needed him. Elena laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Richard, I built the navigation software this plane flies on. I have logged 3,000 hours in simulators testing it. But more importantly, she looked past him to the first officer, Dave. Dave, are you rated for the left seat? Dave, who had been watching in awe, stood up straighter. I have my ATPL and for 1,000 hours. Miss Vance, I'm just waiting for a slot to open up for Captain. Elena smiled. Congratulations, Captain Dave. You just got your promotion. The slot just opened up. She looked back at Thorne, who was now in handcuffs. Get him off my plane. As Thorne was dragged down the aisle, past the staring passengers, past Senator Holloway, who was sulking in row 8, he shouted, You're crazy. You're ruining your own company. Elena didn't answer. She just sat down in seat 1A, her seat. She opened her laptop. Sarah, she called out to the purser. Yes, Miss Vance, Sarah rushed over. Tell the new captain to request a new flight plan. We're leaving in 20 minutes. And please bring me a Diet Coke. No ice. Right away, Miss Vance. The cabin was silent for a long moment. Then slowly a man into a tech CEO from Silicon Valley started to clap. Then the woman across the aisle. Soon, the whole first-class cabin was applauding. Elena didn't look up. She just put her headphones back on. But under the oversized hood, she was smiling. However, the drama wasn't over. As the plane taxied out, Elena's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You think you humiliated me. This isn't over. I know about the London deal, and I know about the incident in Zurich. Watch your back. Elena stared at the screen. Thorne was in custody. He couldn't have sent this. She looked around the cabin. Someone else on this plane was an enemy. And the flight to London was going to be a lot longer than she thought. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner, now under the command of Captain Dave, reached its cruising altitude of 41,000 feet. The cabin lighting had shifted to a soft, calming indigo, designed to mimic twilight and reduce jet lag. For most passengers, the drama was over. The champagne was flowing again, and the murmur of conversation had returned to the polite, hushed tones of the ultra-wealthy. But for Elena Vance, the flight had just turned into a battlefield. She sat in one, staring at the text message on her phone. I know about the London deal, and I know about the incident in Zurich. The London deal was the acquisition of Volta Motors, the move that would secure her legacy. But the Zurich incident, that was something else entirely. 3 years ago, during a closed-door negotiation in Switzerland, Elena had been accused of corporate espionage. It was a framed job that nearly destroyed her. Before she started, she had cleared her name, but the records were sealed. Only 5 people in the world knew about it. One was her lawyer, 2 were dead. One was her ex-partner, and the 5th, she didn't know. Elena minimized her music player and opened a terminal window on her laptop. She wasn't just an owner, she was a coder. A hacker who had built her fortune on understanding the architecture of networks. She typed a rapid string of commands, initiating a packet sniffer on the plane's localized Wi-Fi network. Every device on the plane was connected to the Aurora guest network. She filtered the traffic. The text message hadn't come from the ground at this altitude. Cellular signals were dead. It had been sent via an internet-based messaging app routed through the plane's satellite uplink. She traced the MAC address of the sender. The iPhone 15 Pro Max Titanium had a signal strength of 40 dBm, which was very strong. The location was Triangulation Zone B. On the starboard side, the sender wasn't in New York. The sender was sitting 20 feet behind her. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She slowly closed her laptop and stood up. She needed to see who was in Zone B. She walked casually down the aisle, past the lavatories, and scanned the seats. 1A was hers, 2A was the clapping tech CEO, 2F was an elderly oil heiress, asleep, 3A was empty. She reached row 4, seat for F. Sitting there, sipping a glass of tonic water with a slice of lime, was a man in a bespoke navy suit. He was young, perhaps mid-30s, with slick-back blonde hair and a face that was handsome in a sharp, predatory way. He was reading a financial newspaper, ironically a paper that had Elena's face on the cover of the markets section. He sensed her presence, lowered the paper, and looked up. His eyes were icy blue, devoid of warmth. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice smooth like velvet over gravel. "I was wondering how long it would take you to trace the IP. I bet on 10 minutes. You did it in 6. Impressive." Elena's hands curled into fists at her sides. She recognized him now. It wasn't her ex-partner, but she knew the face from industry galas. "Julian Cross," Elena said, cold. "CEO of Cross Vector, hedge fund manager, short seller specialist." "Guilty," Julian smiled, folding his newspaper. "Please sit. It's a long flight, and we have much to discuss." Elena didn't sit. She leaned against the suite wall, blocking his view of the aisle. "You sent the text. Why?" "To get your attention," Julian said, taking a sip of his drink. "You see, Elena, can I call you Elena? You are currently en route to London to sign the papers for Volta Motors. If you sign at 9 o'clock tomorrow, the stock skyrockets and your company becomes the dominant player in EV logistics. That's public knowledge, Julian." "Yes, but what isn't public knowledge is that my firm, CrossVector, has taken a massive short position against your company. We've bet $2 billion that your stock will crash by noon tomorrow." Elena laughed, a harsh sound. "Then you're going to lose $2 billion. The deal is solid." "Is it?" Julian's smile widened. "The deal requires your physical signature on the hard copies, witnessed by the British regulators by 10 a.m. If you aren't there, the exclusivity clause expires. And you know who is waiting in the lobby of the Volta building right now? My partners, ready to buy Volta the second your option expires." "I'll be there," Elena said. "We land in 5 hours." Julian checked his watch. "A Patek Philippe that cost more than the average house, will we?" Suddenly, the plane lurched. It wasn't turbulence. It was a mechanical yaw. A sharp jerk to the right. The seatbelt signs pinged on instantly. Bing bong. The cabin lights flickered and then died completely. The emergency floor lighting bathed the cabin in a ghostly green glow. The hum of the in-flight entertainment screens cut out, leaving 30 black mirrors staring back at the passengers. "What did you do?" Elena hissed. "Me nothing," Julian said, feigning innocence. "But my software, well, it's quite aggressive. I uploaded a little package to the server while you were busy firing the captain. It's a logic bomb. It attacks the non-critical systems first: lighting, entertainment, Wi-Fi. Then it moves to the communications array." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "You're jamming the plane." "I'm isolating it," Julian corrected. "No Wi-Fi, no SATCOM, no calls to your lawyers, no digital signatures, and, most importantly, the pilots will lose their weather radar and GPS uplink. They'll be flying VFR, visual flight rules, over the Atlantic at night. They'll have to divert, maybe to Iceland, maybe back to Boston. Either way, you miss your meeting. You're endangering everyone on this flight," Elena shouted, causing heads to turn. "Don't be dramatic. The flight controls are air-gapped. The plane won't crash. It will just be lost. And by the time you land and find a phone, Volta will be mine." Elena looked at him with pure loathing. This was the dark side of her world. The side where billions of dollars justified risking lives. "You forgot one thing," Julian, Elena said, her voice trembling with rage. "And what is that?" "I built this network, and I know where the kill switch is." She spun on her heel and ran toward the front of the plane. The front galley was in chaos. Sarah and the other flight attendants were pulling flashlights from the emergency kits. The passengers were beginning to panic. The darkness, combined with the sudden silence of the entertainment systems, triggered a primal fear. "We're going down." "I knew it." Elena looked to her right. Senator Holloway was standing in the aisle at row 8, shouting. His face was illuminated by the flashlight on his phone, This is her fault, Holloway screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Elena. The plane was fine until she came back. She hacked the system to get the captain fired, and now she's crashed the computer. She's a terrorist. Shut up, Holloway, Elena snapped, not breaking her stride. She reached the cockpit door. She punched in the emergency access code. The door clicked but didn't open. The electronic lock was jammed. Julian's malware was spreading faster than she thought. She pounded on the door. Dave, let me in." The door opened manually from the inside. Captain Dave looked pale, illuminated only by the glow of the standby instruments. The main glass cockpit displays were glitching, flickering with static. "Miss Vance." Dave yelled over the noise of the rushing wind. The autopilot had disengaged, and he was hand-flying the aircraft. "We just lost the FMS flight management system. I have no GPS. I have no comms with Gander Oceanic Control. I'm flying blind on magnetic compass and airspeed." "It's a cyber attack," Elena said quickly. "An internal passenger in F4 launched a logic bomb. It's flooding the server with garbage data, choking the avionics. Can you stop it?" Dave asked, his knuckles white on the yoke. "If we don't get the nav back, we have to turn around. I can't cross the ocean without navigation. I'll have to dump fuel and head for Nova Scotia." "That's exactly what he wants," Elena said. "Do not turn around. Give me 10 minutes. Just keep the nose pointed east." 10 minutes, Elena, then I'm turning." Elena rushed out of the cockpit. She needed physical access to the server on a commercial 787. The avionics bay is below the floor, accessible through a hatch. But on the Aurora Elite jets, the server rack for the cabin systems and the satellite uplink was located in a dedicated cooling closet near the forward lavatory, behind a panel that looked like a linen cupboard. She ran to the closet and ripped the linen sign off the door. It was locked. She didn't have the key. "The purser had the key, Sarah," Elena shouted. "The master key now." Sarah was halfway down the aisle, trying to calm a hysterical woman. Before Sarah could move, Senator Holloway stepped in front of the closet door, blocking Elena's path. "Oh, no you don't," Holloway sneered. He was sweating, his eyes wide with panic and malice. "You're not touching anything else. You've done enough damage. We are performing a citizen's arrest." Two of Holloway's aides, burly young men who looked like linebackers, stepped up behind him. "Senator, move," Elena warned, her hand hovering over her pocket where she kept a multi-tool. "This plane is being sabotaged by a man in row 4. If I don't reset the server, we are going to be flying in circles until we run out of fuel." "Liar," Holloway shouted. "You're trying to crash us to collect the insurance. I heard about people like you, tech billionaires with a god complex." "Boys, grab her." The aides lunged. Elena wasn't a fighter, she was a coder, but she was scrappy. She ducked under the first aide's arm and slammed her elbow into his ribs. He grunted but didn't fall. The second aide grabbed her by the hood of her sweatshirt, yanking her back. "Get off me," Elena screamed. "Hold her down," Holloway commanded, feeling powerful again. "Tie her up with zip ties." Just as the aide was about to pin Elena to the floor, a silver serving tray slammed into the side of his head with a deafening clang. The aide crumpled to the floor. Standing over him was Sarah, the purser. She was holding the dented silver tray, breathing hard, her perfectly coiffed hair now a mess. "Do not touch the owner of this airline," Sarah yelled, her voice possessing a ferocity that shocked everyone, including herself. Holloway stepped back, stunned. "You glorified waitress, you assaulted a federal employee, and you are interfering with a flight crew member in an emergency." Sarah spat back. She looked at Elena. "Miss Vance, the key." Sarah tossed a heavy ring of keys to Elena. Elena caught them. She didn't waste a second. She shoved Holloway aside. He was too shocked to resist and jammed the key into the server closet door. It clicked open. Inside, the server rack was screaming. The cooling fans were spinning at maximum RPM, trying to cool the overheating processors. The status lights were blinking a rapid, angry red. Elena fell to her knees. She pulled out her laptop and connected it directly to the maintenance port via a USB-C cable. Her screen filled with cascading code. It was malicious aggressive. It was rewriting the boot partition of the plane's router code. Cross-vector override, Levy 04. You sloppy amateur, Elena muttered. You signed your work. She didn't try to delete the virus. There wasn't time. It would just replicate. She had to kill the environment it lived in. She had to perform a hard reset of the entire in-flight network, effectively rebooting the plane's brain while it was in the air. It was risky for about 30 seconds. The cockpit would go completely dark. No lights, no dials, nothing. She keyed the intercom to the cockpit. Dave, I have to power cycle the main bus. You're going to lose everything for 30 seconds. Trust your physics, don't touch the controls. Do it, Dave's voice cracked over the speaker. Elena typed the command pseudo-system halt force. She hit enter. The noise stopped, and the fans stopped. The emergency lights died. The entire plane was plunged into absolute pitch-black darkness. The silence was terrifying. The only sound was the rush of wind outside the fuselage. Someone screamed in the back. Elena counted in the dark. 1, 2, 3. She felt the plane dip. Without the fly-by-wire stability, the nose was dropping. Gravity was taking over. 15, 16. The sensation of falling was real now. The passengers were shrieking. Holloway was sobbing on the floor. 28, 29. Elena reached into the dark server rack and flipped the physical breaker switch back up. Thumb, thumb. The sound of power inverters kicking in was like a heartbeat. The light slammed back on, blindingly bright white. The fans roared to life. The IF screens rebooted, showing the Aurora Elite logo. In the cockpit, the screens flashed blue, then populated with data. I have GPS, Dave shouted over the intercom, his voice jubilant. I have radar. We are back online. Gander Control is reading us 5 by 5. Elena slumped against the server rack, sweat dripping down her face. She looked at the screen of her laptop. The virus was quarantined, trapped in a sandbox file she had created during the reboot. She looked up. Sarah was helping the groggy 8 off the floor. Holloway was sitting in the aisle, looking defeated. Elena stood up, unplugged her laptop, and walked back to row 4. Julian Cross was sitting there. He looked calm, but his knuckles were gripping his armrest so hard they were white. His screen, which he had been using to monitor the attack, was now black. Elena stood over him. Game over, Julian, she said softly. Julian looked up. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fear. He knew what happened to people who sabotaged aircraft. It wasn't just prison, it was a black hole. You have no proof, Julian whispered. It was a glitch. Elena turned her laptop screen around. It showed the log file, the source IP, and the data packets originating from his phone, which was still connected to the USB port in his armrest. I have the logs, Julian, and I have the code you named after your own company. She leaned in close. We land in London in 4 hours. The Metropolitan Police will be waiting at the gate. I sent them the evidence packet via the satellite link 10 seconds ago. Julian swallowed hard. Oh, Elena added, a wicked smile touching her lips. And I just bought cross-vector stock. I'm shorting it because when the news hits that the CEO is an airline hijacker, well, the crash is going to be spectacular. She turned to Sarah. Sarah, please zip tie Mr. Cross to his seat. Use the heavy-duty ones. As Sarah and the other flight attendant, Elena walked back to seat 1A. She collapsed into the leather. She was exhausted, but she wasn't done. She had a meeting in London and a senator to deal with. The descent into London Heathrow was smooth. The early morning fog parting like a curtain to reveal the sprawling city below. Inside the cabin of Flight A909, the mood was somber, almost church-like. The passengers, who had started the flight as a collection of arrogant individuals, were now united by trauma and a newfound respect for the woman in seat 1A. Elena hadn't slept. She had spent the last 4 hours preparing the legal brief that would dismantle Julian Cross's life and drafting the press release that would save Volta Motors. As the wheels touched down with a reassuring screech of rubber on tarmac, the cabin remained silent. There was no clapping this time, just the heavy exhale of survival. The plane taxied to the private terminal. Through the window, Elena could see the flashing blue lights of the British police, at least 5 cruisers, and a black town car waiting on the tarmac. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Dave's voice came over the intercom, sounding weary but proud. "Welcome to London. Please remain seated while authorities board the aircraft." The cabin door opened. Four officers from the Metropolitan Police, armed and serious, boarded the plane. They didn't look at the passengers. They looked at Elena. "Miss Vance," the lead officer asked. Elena pointed to row 4. "The man in for F, Julian Cross, and the man in the cockpit jump seat. Richard Thorne, you have the digital evidence packet I sent." "We do, ma'am. Thank you." The officers marched down the aisle. They hauled Julian Cross out of his seat. The billionaire hedge fund manager looked small, his bespoke suit rumpled, his face a mask of defeat. As he was led past Elena, he paused. "You won't win, Julian," he hissed. "My lawyers will bury this." Elena didn't even look up from her phone. "Your lawyers just quit, Julian. Check the news." Julian was dragged away. Next, they brought out Richard Thorne. The former captain looked like a ghost. He didn't speak. He didn't look at anyone. He just stared at the floor, the weight of his destroyed career crushing him. Finally, the officers turned to Senator Holloway. "Am I free to go?" Holloway blustered, trying to regain her composure. "I have diplomatic immunity of sorts, actually," Elena said, standing up and zipping her hoodie. "You're not under arrest, Senator. Not yet. But I did forward the audio recording of the cockpit voice recorder to the Senate Ethics Committee. The part where you accused me of terrorism and tried to have me assaulted. It's trending on Twitter right now." Holloway pulled out his phone. His face went gray. His aides were already backing away from him, distancing themselves from the fallout. Elena grabbed her battered bag and walked to the door, stopping in the galley where Sarah was standing. "Sarah," Elena said. "Yes, Miss Vance. Take a week off, paid, and check your bank account. I just approved a bonus for the entire crew. You saved the plane today." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Elena." Elena walked down the stairs to the tarmac. The rain had stopped. The air was crisp and cold. A man in a sharp suit was waiting by the black town car. It was her lawyer, James. "Rough flight?" James asked, taking her bag. "You have no idea," Elena said, sliding into the back seat. "Do we have the papers for Volta ready for signature? We have 30 minutes to get to the city. Let's go." The car sped off toward London. The headlines were merciless. Billionaire short seller arrested for mid-air cyber attack. Pilot fired mid-flight after bullying airline owner. Senator resigns amidst viral cockpit rant. Elena sat in the corner of a quiet coffee shop in Shoreditch, wearing a new hoodie. This one navy blue. She was watching a video on her phone. It was a news report showing Julian Cross being denied bail. Crossvector had filed for bankruptcy that morning. She scrolled down. There was a picture of Richard Thorne. He was currently being sued by Aurora Elite for breach of contract and facing federal charges for interfering with a flight crew. He would never fly again, and Senator Holloway, he was currently taking time away from politics to focus on his family, which was political speak for career over. Elena smiled. She took a sip of her latte. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Miss Vance, I just saw the bonus. You paid off my mortgage. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much." Elena typed back, "You earned it. See you on the next flight. I'll try to dress better this time." She put the phones down. The acquisition of Volta Motors was complete. Her company was now the most powerful logistics firm in Europe. She had won. But more importantly, she had reminded the world of a simple truth. You never know who you're talking to. The person in the cheap clothes might just own the sky you're flying in. Elena Vance picked up her bag, walked out into the London sunshine, and disappeared into the crowd. Just another face in the street, hiding a universe of power. And that is the story of how one arrogant pilot and a greedy hedge fund manager learned the hardest lesson of their lives. Don't judge a book by its cover, especially when that book owns the library. It's a powerful reminder that true power doesn't need to shout, and respect should be given to everyone, regardless of what they wear or where they sit. Karma has a way of balancing the scales, sometimes at 40,000 feet. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who hates bullies, and subscribe for more stories like this one. What would you have done if you were in Elena's shoes? Let me know in the comments below.